Hey, welcome. My name is Tiara, and today I'm going to be sharing how I color skin tones, as well as explaining how I choose colors for them. Disclaimer, these are not all the skin tones that are out there, and they're just some examples that I thought would be helpful. But to start, I'm going to select a medium brown color, and this color can be closer to red or orange. It just kind of depends. But for warmer skin tones, I usually choose colors within this range on the color wheel. But once I choose, I shade in that color for the base. And then I clean things up. Then I take the darkest shade from the swatch, which is a darker, more saturated version of the base, and I use that to shade underneath the chin. Next, I color pick the base color and I darken it a bit, and then I go ahead and I use that as a mid-tone to shade around the face. For the lips, I like to select the base color again, and then I slide that color on the color slider a little bit more towards the reddish orangish tone, and then I choose a darker color for the upper lip. And also within that same range, I choose a lighter color for the bottom lip. And this is usually what I do for two-tone lips. Next, I grab the same darker shading color and I make it a bit more of a purplish red, and I use that to shade around the face as well. So I kind of have two different shading colors going on, but when you have multiple colors in the face, it kind of makes things a bit more interesting and a bit more realistic, if I'm not mistaken. Then for highlights, I like to select the base color again and I lighten it, but I make sure it's not too saturated or too light, and then I use that as the highlights. And then I put the highlights on the peaks of the face, or basically just where the light hits on the face first. And then I start blending everything out. And also I like to redefine the areas where I feel like I need to. Also, if you use a airbrush to kind of blend things out like me, using the default medium airbrush, sometimes it can blend things out a little too much to the point where you can see your background peeking through. And to avoid that, a good idea is to have a base layer for the skin and then a clipping mask layer above that, and you can shade on top of the base without any issues with the background bleeding through. So now I'm just adding in some highlights around the face and on the lips. Then I'm just darkening the eyebrows on a separate layer, just because I thought it looked a lot better, and really just a personal preference. And last but not least, blush. For darker skin tones, I like to use a more darker red color for blush, as opposed to a light baby pink, for example. Next, for the second face, I wanted to go for more of a peachy skin tone. So for the base, I went for more of a neutral light color, and then I ended up adding in peach red tones to the face, and that sort of brought together the peachy color that I was looking for. And then I went ahead and used that to color the base. Next, for shading, I color picked the base color and I moved it to a slightly more yellow side of the color wheel, and then I darkened it and I used that to shade the rest of the face. And I feel like I was able to get away with it just because skin tones have different colors and undertones mixed within it, so you can kind of play around with what you want. But I did end up taking that same yellow color and I darkened it, and now I'm just going back over where I already shaded and redefining those parts. Now for the lips, I choose a light peach color for the lips just because I thought it would look pretty and go with the skin. And I also go ahead and I darken that same color and saturate it, and I use that for the inner parts of the lips, as well as the blush and the other red tones on the face. Redefining some more of the shading. Now here I'm just going ahead and blending things out just to make everything look more smooth and more cohesive. I add a bit more of a bright red to the lips, and then I also shade around them a bit, and then I go ahead and blend that out. I really like how the lips turned out. I feel like they complement the skin really well. But moving on to highlights, again, I just grabbed the base color and I lightened it, and I'm just going around the face and adding in the highlights on the peaks of the face. Something that I noticed while making this video is that choosing your base color really matters and literally sets the tone for the rest of the painting. So choosing that wisely is like really important. So now for the third skin, I'm going for more of a goldish yellow undertone. I tried to choose something a bit closer to a mid-tone gold color, and then I used that for the base. And I just filled that in. So for the shading color, I made it a slightly bit more yellow, and I tested it out to see, and I liked it, so I ended up using that for the shading. For choosing the more gold yellow tones for this face, I had to be careful not to make the skin too yellow to the point where it doesn't look like a real skin tone, if that makes sense. So that was something that I had to keep in mind. Next, for the lips, I chose a more coral pink or a orangey pink for the lips, and for the red tones on the face. Something about the coral looked really pretty to me, so I went with that. And now I'm doing highlights. So for the highlights, I actually moved away from the yellow toned color, and I used a more neutral version of the base color and lightened it and used that as the highlights. Now I'm just going ahead and darkening up the red tones in the face. Now I'm shading the lips. After that, I blend them out and I add in the teeth color. Then to darken up the shading around the face, I originally went for a darker, more gold color, but I changed that color to more of a orange gold color, and I made it darker and shaded with that. I found that it looked a lot better and a lot less dull. And for underneath the chin, I went for more of a orangey brown color, and I thought that looked really nice as well. So now I'm just blending things out and adding in some final touches. But this is pretty much how it turned out. And I had to go back and add the shadow underneath the peachy shade, which was just more of a darker red color. Next, moving to the fourth face, I chose a more reddish, rich colored brown, but I made sure to not make it too red because I still wanted to look like a brown color. And that's what I used to fill it in. Next, for the shadow shading, I used a dark red brown again, but I moved the color more towards the bottom left of the slider, so I had more of a cooler reddish purple tone. Next, for the mid-tone shading, I color picked the base color and I made that a slightly bit lighter, and I shaded it with that. And that's kind of been a recurring theme for this video. I color pick the base and I make it darker or lighter, saturated or desaturated depending on my needs. Now getting to the lips, I choose a coral shade and at first glance it looks a bit too light in my opinion, but I plan to use a darker shade to outline the coral color, which gives the lips more of a lip liner look and also brings the colors together. As for the color that I used, originally I used more of a reddish tone brown, but then I decided to darken it. And now I'm blending out the lips and adding in the teeth color. For the highlights, I chose a more red-orange color, leaning a little bit more towards the orange side, and I made sure not to make it too saturated, and that's what I used to highlight the face. A lot of these colors I just kind of have to play around with and demo, meaning just try them out on the face before I can actually go for it with them. But now I'm just going ahead around the face and blending things out. Highlighting a bit, blending things back out a bit. Now I'm adding in some blush, and kind of like I said with the other darker skin tone, I like to use more of a darker red color for blush, just because I feel like it looks a little bit better. And with this drawing, I think I could have went a little bit darker with the red, but with each video I make, I'm learning something new, honestly, so I can't complain. But yeah, now adding in some final touches. I'm darkening the eyebrows and the eyelashes as well. Again, just more of a personal preference. This is pretty much how everything turned out. I hope this video was helpful or maybe interesting, but if you like this video, give it a like or consider subscribing. Thank you for watching.